should DIY artists' catalogues live in 2025? You know, with DSPs tightening rules, you know, platforms like Spotify, we've heard a little bit about this. They're changing their payout methods, labels, they're playing both sides. What does this all mean for independent artists and the future of their rights? Well, we've got an amazing moderator today. We've got the amazing Jenniskens, Business Development at Prisma Music Group. And this panel brings together serious insight from people who know catalogue. We've already heard how saturated catalogues are. Licensing, monetization, and artist services. They know these areas inside out. So I'm going to let Anne take it from here. And 𝘠𝘓𝘁𝘶, please put your hands together for our amazing panel.
I'll be honest with you, I kind of want to go. Thank you very much. I can't remember which consoles put down. No, I brought one with me. I think this is the one. Feels the closest one.
Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome. And thank you for being here on this tropical day. I'm Anne Jenniskens, and I'm Director New Business of independent record label Prisma Music Group from Sweden. And together with these 5 wonderful panelists, I will discuss the topic of the emergence of a two-tiered music industry and the challenges and opportunities that it brings for DIY artists, self-releasing artists. While the independent music sector continues to boom with market share for ownership almost reaching 50%, there's also a widening divide between, on the one hand, major rights holders and self-releasing artists on the other hand, causing the emergence of this two-tiered music industry, where on the one hand, the traditional streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple center around mainstream music, and DIY self-releasing artists find their place in the creator economy. But before we dive in, let us take the time to introduce our wonderful panelists. Kimberly, would you like to start?
Sure. My name is Kimberly. I'm the founder of Hypertribe, which is artist development at scale for the early stage market. So, yeah, we built AI Music Manager for that segment.
Great to have you, Loredana.
Hi, I'm Loredana. I am the founder of Future Play Music, which is a consultancy specializing on digital licensing strategy and business affairs for content owners. I would say the majority of my clients at the moment are distributors, and I also work with LANDR to handle their licensing department.
Hey, I'm Alex. I look after all of the interaction between Beatport and the industry, whether it's record companies, distribution companies, independent artists, and music tech, which is partly why I'm here.
Hi, my name is 𝗟𝘁𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗶. My background is artist management, and last year I launched Ellevate. Ellevate is a platform that works with early stage artist development via matching those artists with experienced music industry professionals, managers, experts, so they get one-to-one coaching at scale.
Hi everyone, my name is Deniz Everling. I'm the artist and label representative for the German-speaking region, Germany, Switzerland and Austria at Bandcamp, and my role is to look after artists and labels who are already on the platform, but also help new artists and labels to come to Bandcamp and make the most of our tools.
Great, fantastic. Thanks for being here. Charlotte, I would like to start with you. Do you actually recognize this trend, and how is it affecting your artists and their business?
I think it's very clear that there is a massive divide in how streaming services treat artists. If you're a major label act, you just have a much more access to curation and resource that allows you to be prioritized on certain platforms. And for me, when I'm working with early stage artists, I think we've just seen over the last week, or the last 24 hours, the data coming out of streaming platforms is less and less meaningful. You're seeing the sundown thing that 𝘵𝘁𝘁𝗶𝘀 are investigating. You're seeing what's happened with 𝘸𝘢𝘁𝘁𝘁 and Spotify and those streaming platforms becoming, and no offense to 𝘵𝘩𝘰, I know 𝘵𝘸𝘰 are a different kettle of fish, but seeing that actually engaging with these streaming platforms is no longer beneficial to early stage artists. There's very little benefit in what streaming numbers look like. You're having to pay to play, to artificially manipulate streaming numbers for optics. And actually, for me, when I'm working with early stage artists, I'm like, are we building a career where you can actually live off of making music, or are we building a career where you can have some nice shiny numbers next to your Spotify profile? I want to build artists that have revenue streams that are consistent, that actually allow them to monetize their creativity in lots of different ways. And so that takes a bit more of creative thinking and energy than just going, here, we're going to put some music up and we're going to pay a load of playlists to play that music. So for me, it's an opportunity, but it's very real.
And Kimberly, how do you see this?
So I just saying in the other room, I'm a big believer in innovation. So where there's a market need, something always pops up, right? So people build for where the market starts to dip or so on. So there might be a two-tiered system, but if I threw into the mix as well, what happens if you had a three-tiered system, right? So I think the rhetoric over and over again from a lot of the artists we're looking at is the us and them. It's early stage, us, and then, the industry is screwing us if we're not major label. So that's the kind of culture. But we have a lot of artists as well that, to their credit, are extremely innovative and are finding other ways to find their audience. So they are finding that, yes, of course, they might put their stuff on Spotify, but as a company, our fundamentals and our values is very much based around monetization. So they're consistently trying to find other platforms, and I think that's just going to get more and more obvious. We're teaching a lot of artists who don't know how to discover new platforms, the tech, even how to utilize some of the technology at the moment, like YouTube. We did a nice talk with them the other day, and to use those platforms a lot better as well has helped these artists. So I think there is probably a divide, but how essential it is for monetization is a whole other question to me. Yeah.
Loredana, what's your take on this?
My take is, in a way, I'm happy to hear that the demonetization of the 1,000 streams hasn't really created an issue on an individual basis. But where it creates me problem when I'm negotiating deals with platforms that are trying to introduce this type of two-tier system is the implication that you have on a bigger scale. Because obviously the argument is, okay, I'm taking away pennies from an independent artist, fine. But when you start multiplying the numbers, because we are in a volume economy, then the money that is being taken away starts to matter. And what I find unfair of this type of system is the way that we are redirecting the money, because basically what we have created is some sort of a reverse Robin Hood situation, whereby we're taking money away from emerging artists and we're just redistributing them with the ones with a major market share on a certain platform. And that's the thing that annoys me. I can understand that there are needs, basic needs on an economic level, that they might think that the shift is going to create some sort of value, but I don't think that this is the way that we should be doing it. And if we look at the bigger picture of why this is happening, which is not really benefiting the streaming services that implement in this type of measures, because they're not taking any cuts. They are redistributing money from A to B. But the reason why they're doing it seems to me, I don't have the ultimate answer, but it seems to me to be a redistribution that we're doing because the majors have been losing market share over the last few years. The indie sector has been gaining traction. The DIY sector has grown, I think in 2024 by 8.5% versus 5.3% in the previous 2 years, which means that the DIY catalog might actually pay out peanuts on an individual basis, but again, on an aggregated basis, is shifting. So,
but then to quickly, but the other issue there is that the majors are buying up all of that independent
exactly.
sector.
So what I was about to say is like what we're doing now is just to, at an individual DSP level, we're trying to create this as a solution, and then the other was, so we're trying to regain market share in this way, or we're just buying outright peers downtown and so on. So it seems to me that when we look at the industry at a higher level, is the shift or redistribution of market share that is creating this divide. And I think it's unfair. So in a way, I'm glad that individual is not affecting the artist on a case-by-case basis, but it's still creating an overarching unfair situation that it's extremely annoying, because the only ones that could fight it are the ones that are pushing for it. So,
wasn't part of the reason for the 1,000 stream in the last 12 months sort of cap or floor, partly because of all the AI generative music flooding the platforms, and they were trying to find a way of limiting that effective stream mining that was happening, where people were flooding their servers with all this content, and it was siphoning off bits of money for records that had no real audience, but it was enough.
But that's been implemented before AI. So that's the only thing that I don't see the implementation has come a couple of years before.
No, it came afterwards. Like it's only been
2 years at least on Spotify.
No.
It is. I was negotiating the first implementation.
Right, but when it actually got implemented was only like the beginning of this year, or? Yeah.
2 years. The cap on stream has been already 2 years. That's why it's also, I don't think it's necessarily entirely negative, because definitely it's got a carbon debt, has got some sort of an effect on fraudulent activity. I just feel that this, probably we will discuss later, there are better ways to do it that is not creating this 2 tier. But this definitely has got some interesting, probably positive evaluation in curbing the AI, but it was before. It was strategically and strangely after there was a lot of complaint from the majors about the AI content being garbage, if I am quoting correctly. And then strangely we got into this type of implementation. I'm probably going to lose half of my future jobs opportunity after this panel. But
stream mining was happening before, but yes, okay, all right, understood.
Hey, but Alex, do you recognize what Loredana, Kimberly, and Charlotte are saying?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from a Beatport point of view, we have a few different businesses. We have a distribution business, and we've seen that around a 20% drop off in terms of streams that are recognized as payable through Spotify, because they're the only ones that are really doing this right now, which is not great. It's not a disaster, but it's an odd dynamic for a company that was once making money that way. On the Beatport side, technically we've enforced actually weirdly a 3-tier system. I quite like. Thank you, Kimberly, for that little nugget.
I'll take my invoice later.
Yeah, that's good. We kind of did a 2-tier system with the record labels, let alone the independent artists. We we recognised a fault line with our business, which is the more successful labels were always doing better because the main place that music is sold and discovered is through our sales charts, which means you've got to sell a lot before you're in them. And that's great if you've got the marketing budgets of either major record companies or in our space, the majors are companies like Defected and Toolroom and Monster Cat and Armada. And so we had to find a way of giving early stage labels a chance to actually have visibility on the store. And so we created this product called Hype, but you had to pay to get into it. It's not very expensive, but it did sort of bifurcate the actual content that was on the platform to allow visibility for it. And essentially, we kind of copied the same idea again when we brought in independent artist repertoire, i.e. artists that don't have a record label representative onto the platform. And we just did that a slightly different way. But it's essentially probably just an issue with our platform and discoverability. We don't have any algorithms yet. It's all human curation and sales charts. And so we just had to find this way of creating these cohorts and giving them all the opportunity to actually have visibility on the store. I don't think that's the same thing as kind of penalising somebody for not having enough streams. And I don't agree with the proposition, but that was how we sort of did it. It was like, are you really serious about Beatport? Do you understand what Beatport is? We aren't a laggard consumer DSP. We're all about DJ customers. We're just different, so think about us differently. And if you want to invest in us, great, cool. Here's an opportunity for you to do so. So it was just sort of giving them an opportunity, but making it make commercial sense.
Great, so we're talking about a three-tiered system now.
Three-tier system, that's it.
Awesome.
Can we change the slide?
Deniz, I would love to hear about Bandcamp and how have the recent changes over at Spotify and Amazon affected Bandcamp's business?
I mean, as you probably know, we have quite a different approach. We are quite far away from a tier system. We treat everyone in the same way, whether you are an artist or label who just started yesterday or an established one. We have one deal for everyone, and our deal is artist first and transparent, which means our fees are very slim, 10% on physical sales, 15% on digital, which means on average 82% of sales go directly to artists and labels. And as you also know, Bandcamp is not just a place, just a place where you can buy music, but we also have a global community of dedicated music fans who are willing to pay for music, who are willing to invest in their favorite artists, and who are willing to dig for new music and emerging artists. And I think that's the community is basically in the heart of what we are doing, because we are always trying to enable the artist and fan relationship, which I think with these challenges we have just discussed is getting more and more important, that you actually have control over your fan base, you know who your fans are, and I think that's the biggest difference as well on Bandcamp. As an artist, you have access to your fans. That means you have access to demographic data, you have access to the email addresses, you can download the email addresses, you can use the email addresses in your own communication. And I think this sustainable thinking is getting more and more important as an artist and as a label, and to think about a sustainable career versus scaling up quickly, I think, is the key.
Great, and do you see the emergence of this three-tiered system as an opportunity or as a challenge for Bandcamp?
I mean, that's what we have been doing. We are doing since 17 years, and I know we have been talking about superfans, etc. And I don't think we don't like the term, and we don't like to name our users as superfans because it's nothing new. There have always been superfans, and I think there is always a community who is willing to pay for music. And I think it's just about making these opportunities and, as Kimberly said, educating artists and labels how to make most of these platforms, and also having ethical approaches to editorial featuring, like Bandcamp Daily. It is very democratic. It is human curated, and You can be featured as a label or an artist who just has 3 followers on Bandcamp, but you can be also featured as an artist who has, I don't know, 500,000 followers. I think, yeah, we believe that there are other ways to exist as an artist, and I think that's what Bandcamp has been showing over the 17 years.
Great, interesting. Loredana, I would love to hear you. Do you think that this 2-3-tiered system will have broader implication for the indie sector, or for self-releasing artists in particular?
I think on a granular level, yes, because it's probably going to bring new opportunities. I mean, as Kimberly was mentioning, they're finding other ways that they can monetize, and it's just the fact that the broader implication from my side, so the one of negotiating catalog licenses, is more like, where do I draw the line? I have a 1,000 cap now. Is it going to stay 1,000 in the next negotiation cycle? Is it going to be something else coming up? One of the issues that I see at the moment when it comes to negotiating on behalf of DIY catalogs is also the problem that is not necessarily inherent on the type of catalog, but the fact that we have now an association between DIY content and fraudulent content that is kind of become a complete stigma. It's like you refer to DIY catalog, the assumption is that I got a lot of fraudulent activity. It's not necessarily true, and it shouldn't be the way that people are seeing this type of content. So to kind of re-answer your question, is like, I think that the broader opportunities or the broader challenges are going to be coming, finding a way to kind of distinguish the narratives and making sure that then the good part of the DIY catalog, which again is generating money not necessarily because of fraud, can actually thrive. If we need to make it a bit more complex for people, and so certain platforms are not viable anymore and they can thrive somewhere else, we will survive. I still think that my job is going to be to try to keep the system as fair as I can, even if I sometimes I have the bargaining power, sometimes I don't. I'm still going to fight for it. But I think the important thing is that we try to clean up the narrative for this type of catalog and for this type of artist, and we're not going to make it even worse, especially now with AI coming on top. Is we're going to, as they were mentioning earlier, is this going to be, are they using DIY distributors to distribute AI content as fraud? Yes, they are. We will need, but we have solutions that we can implement, so we shouldn't be using one word to describe 2 different issues.
It was a really interesting point, the stigma attached to it. I ran into a big problem internally when I was trying to bring on independent artist repertoire into the platform, because there was this inherent fear that the platform would get flooded with irrelevant content or not very good, the quality wouldn't be too high. And I've fortunately been able to prove all of them wrong, which is great. And yeah, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that these artists are now making through Beatport, which they just wouldn't have been able to do before. And I think it's great that technology has enabled that democratization for so many. But yeah, you're right, there's a real stigma behind it.
Hey, and what do you think is needed in order to create a viable DIY ecosystem that works for both self-releasing artists and service providers?
I know.
Go, Dana.
User-centric. I think that we already got the solution to kind of get to the end of all these discussions that we are having. We just decided to not implement it in certain places. But if you think about it, if we want to avoid unfair redistribution of money and ensure that artists are paid fair and actually achieve on top of it a limitation of the fraud that is taking place, that's all achieved through user-centric. It's not going to be the perfect model, which I don't know if we will ever get there, but it's surely an improvement to what we got now.
We've been pioneering user-centric for 21 years. We sell downloads.
Well, what do you see as potential solutions?
Well, I think I don't think there is a perfect solution because, like any industry anywhere in the world, the music industry is a relationships industry. Before algorithmic playlists, it was Spotify playlists or playlists, and you had to know the curator, and it was all a big challenge of finding out who the curator was of the playlist you wanted to get on. And prior to that, it was having rub shoulders with the right people to get in the right blogs, and whatever it is, it's always an accessibility thing. And now, you know, it's pay to play on the playlist and all that kind of stuff. And so relationships, like accessibility to relationships is really hard. It's what we kind of try and why we have a human approach with Ellevate, because we still believe that, yes, you can optimize stuff with AI, but there is always going to be a human element to building artists' career in this industry. And I think like that's a really difficult, I think there's a really quite, maybe a harsh thing to say, like not every DIY early stage artist is going to have a financially viable career, because it's just not realistic.
It was never like that.
No, but as I'm saying, like it's not, exactly. It's never been like that. Like not everyone that can like record music and get it out there is going to be a full-time musician. It just isn't. Like the same way that like if I decide I want to go and be a carpenter tomorrow or something, I'm not necessarily going to be able to make a living. It can be a hobby, and being a hobby, there's nothing wrong with that. And so I think that like being really realistic about like which artists are going to have a viable career, what tools they need and what resources they need to be able to like do that, I think is a really big conversation we have to have. And you know, that I think we are avoiding it a lot at the moment with a lot of conversation around AI and superfans and everything. And that conversation seems to be skipping over like how we make artists, develop artists into artists that are going to have viable careers, like creatively, artistically, like with a business sense, all of that kind of stuff. And obviously like Kimberly's doing that at Hypertribe, like giving artists the resources. We're doing that. But I think like we in all these conferences like skip over that part quite a lot because we're so focused on the technology. We're not actually focused on the artists themselves and like what they need to do to make this viable. And that requires a lot of resource, and that is two-tier, because if you're come from a financially secure background, you can afford to do it. But you know, there's so much at play of whether you can be successful or not in this industry.
100%, by the way.
So I can just talk about that all day.
No, like it's become one of the narratives that I've become a little sort of obsessed about as well, because I think people are kidding themselves that it's all just like a charity. I don't know. It's a business. It's an industry, and ultimately that's why record companies exist, right? They used to be, and sometimes still are, the ones that will invest in and give the opportunity to an artist that can't afford their rent because they're not from privilege, perhaps.
But they're not doing that so much anymore.
Right.
Like, they're really not.
Right,
like,
100%.
When I first started my career, I knew as a manager that I could find an artist, like pluck them out of school. They've never released a record before. I knew that give me 2 to 3 years, if that artist was really good, put them with the right producers, get the right PR on board, we could probably get a record deal within 3 years and then that would pay me my commission that I'd not been paid for 3 years as a manager prior to that. And it was a pretty, as long as you had talent it was a good package, that was a pretty dead cert. Now that's not a dead cert. I've got artists that I'm working with millions of streams that can't get a funded distribution deal. It's really hard, so...
Yeah,
Kimberly, do you have any... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say just one last thing on that, and I think it's in part because the narrative that has been spun by some companies in the independent artist space is you shouldn't ever give away any of your rights. And I don't know that that's true all of the time. I do think that the record industry has a terrible reputation for some awful deals, which do still go on, but less so these days. But I don't believe that you should exclude the opportunity to have a team around you to help you put your records into the market if you're serious about having a career. You don't have to sign everything forever, evermore, but certainly, and dance music is a great example of this, having a couple of records out on some of the labels that I mentioned earlier gives you profile, so that if you then put a record out yourself, through a district
dance music specifically, that's really important because it's tribal, right? Because every label has a community, and it's very like labels in dance music particularly are very like identity led. So if you're an artist and you're part of that, like you're kind of on a road. Not for like pop music is like, you know, it depends on the genre.
But pop though is a different beast anyway. It's like, you know, what popular by numbers, therefore it's commercial. So I don't think that particular genre lane is the same as anything else. Like, even if you look at rock, you can put an EP out on One Little Indian or something cool like that will give you some profile. But you could then put other records out once you found an audience. And anyway,
thanks.
I'll stop.
Good refreshing point you made, Alex. Kimberly, I would love to hear your thoughts. And what do you see as potential solutions? You have anything to add?
I mean, I can't obviously speak for the DSPs because I'm not on that side, but what I can see from an artist development perspective, especially when you're taking a look at DIY artists, one thing that we're consistently finding again and again and again that we're doing is actually technical, like discovering new technology, right? So artists are actually generally quite bad at it. So they can't find new platforms and so on. So I think there needs to be a lot more in terms of educating on what different types of platforms are out there, how to integrate that. And we were just talking about AI and education. One of the things that we can see the difference between, obviously, success, well, no, that's too extreme, but someone who's a little bit more successful maybe than an artist who isn't actually utilizing and leveraging workflow processes by automating a lot of the tasks that they're doing in terms of DIY, in terms of their DIY setup. So yeah, that is AI, but it's AI in terms of workflow automation. Artists have a lot to do every single day. And I think that the two things that are completely overlooked, especially in the DIY scene, is first of all, confidence. Like that is actually the number one problem that we surveyed 400 musicians of our database. Confidence was the number one problem, not funding.
Can you elaborate?
Just knowing that they're on the right path, they're doing the right thing, knowing that they've got a strategy, knowing where they're going. That was the number one problem over finance, over marketing. It's confidence. Like, so knowing that you are confidently moving in the right direction, but then if you take a look in terms of like different platforms, it's not being pigeonholed into. I'm quite conscious of never getting into getting into the negative headspace around I think there's a lot of talk around AI that's it's so bad, and then obviously taking a look at this two-tier system. Oh, it's so bad and so on. But yes, that's one option. Let's look at all the other options that you also have on the table, and how can we highlight them a little bit better? How can we educate people a little bit better? How can we open our minds to the fact that this isn't just this is one way? Appreciate might be maybe quickest way, maybe sometimes, but it's about, I think, to build a better ecosystem, we've got to take a look at what else is on the table. Yeah.
Great. So that's quite positive. Deniz, where do you see growth coming from in the next 5 to 10 years for self-releasing artists? Let's make it 5.
I think, as I said before, maybe repeating myself, but I think the direct fan relationship is the key. Like, to be able to tell your story as an artist, have a platform to tell your story, be authentic about the things you are doing, the art, and also fostering this relationship with your fans. I think it is a sustainable way to growth. And when I look at Bandcamp, you can sell music, obviously, but you should also sell more, which is the physical side of things. Like when we look at our data, what we sell is 50% digital, 50% physical, which means vinyl, etc., but also merch. And I think, especially for dedicated fans, super fans, like merch has a emotional value and is often collector pieces. So whenever you can have limited editions of vinyl or t-shirts or whatever you have, I think that's another way to create additional revenue. But I think, in the heart of everything you do is the fan relationship on the artist side, but then also on the fan side, I think to give fans the right tools to be able to discover new music in their own way, and also give them the tools to support artists more if they want to. Like on Bandcamp, we have this feature called Pay What You Want, and as a label and artist, you can set a price, and fans can decide if they want to pay more. And in 20% of the time or situations, fans actually decide to pay more. So I think it just shows that people are still ready to pay for music and for merch, but we just have to provide the right tools.
Great, amazing.
Can I just quickly add to that?
Absolutely.
So one thing that we were discussing earlier over lunch was decoupling the metric of success, which is really frustrating because it's something that we do regularly with a lot of the artists, and because we have the scale that we can obviously see some of the trends that are happening across like how much merch is being sold or whatever else, and what is the insight into why that specific segment was successful. It's looking at like a social media presence with hundreds and thousands of followers doesn't necessarily correlate to money. So if we decouple the idea that just because you've got, and it sounds really obvious saying it, but I feel like no one ever really says it, which is that just because you've got loads of streams and just because you've got loads of social media following doesn't necessarily mean that you're making money. So that not the number one, but one of the biggest impacts of an artist on the DIY circuit for actually making money was having a good email list through merch. So one of our most successful artists, she's about $250,000 a year in merch, and so we worked with her merch team to basically extract some of the data of early artists, and one of them was definitely direct to fan. So taking a look at the email list, they had a good email list, and then we got the points of at what point can you predict that artist, that kind of, if you've got 300 people on a mailing list, what numbers would you generally be looking at in terms of merch? So I think in this two-tier system, it almost becomes relevant if we can do that, pretty much, yeah, and have a different way of thinking.
Great. Loredana, what do you see, where do you see growth coming from the artists, self-releasing artists that you represent?
I think that there are also new platforms coming up that I found kind of interesting, and at least dealing with them and with the idea that they see themselves.
Can you name a few?
Yes. I think it's quite interesting because we have a US version and a UK version. They're two different companies, but their products are incredibly similar but interesting. One is called �㿬𝘁, US side, and then Listen on the UK side. They bought new streaming services that see themselves as an add-on to existing subscriptions, so not planning to substitute any existing streaming service subscription. They're only aimed to independent artists, no major own catalog, which I think is probably the biggest challenge, because a lot of cool artists are also the major, so it kind of dictates the type of catalog that they will have available, but they have an innate connection for direct-to-fan, allowing opportunities for live music, and there is really a 360 integration to allow artists to communicate with their fans and build their fan base as if there was some sort of stepping point in assistance. Then eventually you can scale up and get to maybe Spotify or Amazon with already more than 1,000 streams, and then maybe we can nullify that kind of things. But I like that there are new realities coming up that are more kind of, obviously we got two here that are heavily representing of existing realities, but I like that there are also new realities coming up to address, the Indian DIY sector in a slightly different way.
I think one of the issues around so-called super fandom and all these platforms is actually in reality a lot of super fandom happens in platforms that we have no control over. It happens on Reddit and it happens on Roblox, and this is the major labels are really struggling with squaring that away for themselves, because you can't own that. And Warner did a massive drive on super fan platforms, and Universal at one point were building something. I don't know what's happened to it because a lot of people that were working on it got laid off. But this grab for super fandom, it can't be done in this heavy-handed way. It has to be done with fans in mind, and actually it happens in corners of the internet that we don't really have a lot of control over, and we can't manipulate all that well. And so that's a real big challenge. And so to Kimberly's, both your points is nurturing this small fan base and giving them the tools and making them feel empowered and making them feel really almost like cult-like, like really strongly about you so that they go off into these pockets of the internet and advocate for you. That's one of the most powerful things an artist can do. And so when we're talking about like with artists that we're working on, like where you're spending your resource, like, you know, so many artists when they first start working with us, they've really got their eyes on the prize of like, I need 100,000 followers, I need 500,000 monthly listeners, all these numbers. And like to Kimberly's point, like we just go like, no, like you need like 50 people that really care about you to begin with. Like we need to break this all the way down to actually like what's going to change the game for you. You need like 50, then 100, then 500, you know, people going out and advocating for you. And that's when revenue streams really start to become meaningful, because then, like, to your point, like they'll overpay for stuff. They'll pay whatever you want for stuff, and they really want to be involved. And that's why with artists, I'm always working on like, we're working on revenue streams that are so niche and specific to that artist and their community. And like, we're not looking at what everybody else is doing all the time. We're carving our own lane.
So you see this story about 1,001 fans as realistic?
I see that every artist has to carve out their own career, and like when, you know, a lot of very young artists come and they have a vision of like, I want to play arenas and I want to, you know, do all like, you know, tick all these boxes. And I think in the creative industries, like, and you know, everyone in the room might be able to attest to this, when you go into the creative industries, you're forever trying to prove to the people outside of the music industry that you have a real job. And it's like worse for artists, because they have to, like, they're constantly being like feeling in, like to Kimberly's point, feeling very insecure about like, what am I doing? Like, is this even a real job? Like, probably they've got family, friends around them being like, okay, when are you gonna give that up? When are you gonna get a real job? And so with that like narrative all the time, you're constantly looking for like markers that people outside the industry will like recognize as success. And actually we need to like break it down and like, what is actually gonna be a meaningful life for you? That doesn't necessarily mean touring 12 months of the year around arenas. That might be like something very small and like, you know, one of my artists I work with, she lives in Bali 6 months of the year and like, you know, has a very different lifestyle to what she thought she was going to do when she signed to Columbia Records 10 years ago. Very, very different. And so it's like, it's just, there's no one size fits all here. So yeah, 1,000 fan theory can be true for some people, some not for others. It's not like the only prescription. It's very bespoke.
Alex, you have something to say.
Can I just feed off this? This is really interesting. Also, do you get to do business trips to Bali? I
actually like can't be asked. It's too far.
It is a long way. So just as a reminder, The 1,000 True Fans was a book written by 𝘂𝘂𝘁 in 2008. So this is at a time before streaming really took hold. Napster technically was there, but if you look at the history of streaming revenues, it was 2011 before we saw a 50-50 split in Western markets between streaming and downloads, right? So these theories were written, you know, in a time before, and so this idea of 1,000 True Fans was a thought experiment really within a book, right? That's where that came from. There was a 2009 book, forgotten the name of the author, but he then used the term superfan, and what he was describing was something else you just said, which is this idea that a fan can become, without prompting, your advocate, your, you know, the person that will go and take your message without you having to prompt them. And that's what the superfan mentality is. Everything you just said, spot on. And in fact, I'm just going to borrow from everybody else here to finish off. Yes, 100%. The know who your audience is and nurture those relationships and change away from the vanity metrics and actually just work out what's really important to you. So yeah. I mean, it's been a good panel. I've enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That was great. I think we have like a few minutes left, so if anyone has a question, the time is now. Nope? Then I would really like to thank you. I've learned a lot, and I would love some book tips from you, Alex.
Can I tell you how I did a panel at South by, and it was about superfans, right? So I was like, you know what, I know where the name of that came from. So I asked ChatGPT, and that's what the answer it gave me.
AI wins the day again.
AI is good for something, yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, 𝘠𝘂𝘵, I'm sure you found that absolutely amazing. What an incredible panel. Please put your hands together. Thanks, everyone.